How's it going, everyone? How are you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Took a bit of a break there for the holidays. Needed a chance to just relax and rest, especially after getting out of school. I needed an actual break from everything so I could just relax for a little bit. But we're back. Obviously, I missed a couple weeks here on the Premier League, but we're going to be getting into week 17. Can't believe it, already week 17 of the Premier League. But before I get into it, I want you guys to go to the comments, let me know all your predictions for every single game this week. And while you're down there, hit that like and subscribe button. But while we're here, let's get right into it. First game of the week, Everton versus West Ham. Everton home, West Ham away. Everton obviously had their last game against Man City postponed, and before that though, they did have their close 1-0 win over Sheffield. West Ham had their 0-0 draw with Southampton last week. Obviously both these teams are in a bit of a same boat. They're both teams who for a minute there were pretty mid-table, high mid-table teams, constantly just kind of staying. Obviously, last season, West Ham had a pretty rough, nervy end where they were this close to getting relegated, but they made it out, and now they're here this season doing really well, as are Everton. Everton, I think, more so because they've, been consistently pushing themselves towards the top of the table. They've been in second, they've been in first for a second for just like 1 week there. So I mean, both teams are doing much better than I'm sure a lot of people expected them to. So I think this is a really interesting game between both these sides. In terms of the odds, you might see it down there already. We're trying out a new layout, by the way. You might see it down there already. Minus 103 for the Everton win, plus 245 for the draw, plus 270 for the West Ham win. Now for this game, I think I'm gonna agree with the odds. I think I'm gonna go with an Everton win. I think I'm gonna go with a close 1-0 win. I think that's a fair. It'll be a fair scoreline for both teams. I don't think one blows out the other, and if they do, if it's a sort of blowout scoreline, I think it'll be a pretty tight game where the scoreline doesn't really reflect how the entire game played out. But I am gonna go with an Everton win in this one. I think it's gonna be very close. I don't think there's gonna be a whole lot separating the two. That's where I kind of disagree with the odds. I don't think Everton are heavy favorites. But I do think that they have what it takes to win this game and take it from West Ham. Now moving on to the second game of the week, Man United versus Aston Villa. This is probably going to be a pretty tight game as well. United most recently had their 1-0 win at the death over Wolves. Aston Villa had their 1-1 draw with Chelsea. In terms of the odds, it's minus 139 for the United win, plus 300 for the draw, plus 325 for the Aston Villa wins. Obviously United, as I would have expected, are the heavy favorites in terms of the odds. I kind of want to side with Aston Villa, and I would think that they can and are more than capable of pulling out a result, but I think United will take this one. I think it'll be close, just like the last game. I'm gonna go with a 2-1 win for Man United. However, if Aston Villa manage to pull off some kind of result, I honestly won't be surprised at all if they manage to pull off a draw, or even better for them, pull off a win. That'll be huge for them. They've pulled out obviously massive wins throughout the season, so they're more than capable of taking down United. However, I think United will just find that second half magic that they've been having and take down Aston Villa. Maybe it'll be 1-0 Aston Villa going into the half, and United with their second half magic will go into the second half and just take over the game as they have been in recent times. So I do think United will take this one over Aston Villa. Now Spurs versus Leeds. Spurs obviously most recently had their game postponed versus Fulham, but before that they had the 1-1 draw with Wolves. They actually haven't won a game, I think, in their last 4. Leeds most recently had their big 5-0 win over West Brom. In terms of the odds, it's minus 125 for the Spurs win, plus 290 for the draw, plus 300 for the Leeds win. Now obviously Leeds are a team who can and have pulled off some huge results. They can do some damage. They can really do some damage against any team that they play against. They have, I believe it's the most goals across all of their games, whether they're scoring or conceding. It's the most goals of any team in the Premier League happens in their games. So I do think that they can pull off something against Spurs. It's a question of whether they can defend well. Spurs have one of the deadliest counterattacks in the Premier League right now. So it's a matter of if Leeds can hold that counterattack and take the game to Spurs, not let it go the other way around. So I'm gonna go with probably my controversial pick of the week here. Not really an official thing, but I'm gonna go with the Leeds win. I think Leeds upset Spurs with a big win for them and helps them get safer in the mid-table area. and Spurs continue to struggle a bit. I'm sure they'll find their form again, but I'm gonna, just for the sake of a bit of controversy here, I think Leeds can pull it off. Like I said I did say in the last game, the Aston Villa can pull off against United, but in terms of form, I think Spurs are in a bit more of a dip than United right now, and I feel like Leeds are very explosive and can take the game to Spurs. I'm gonna go with a 3-2 win for Leeds. I think it's gonna be a wild one. 3-2. I think it's gonna be a wild one between these two teams. I feel like Spurs will get at Leeds, and maybe it'll be like 1-0 Spurs, 1-1, 2-1 Spurs, 2-2, and then Leeds take the last goal and win the game. A wild one, like I said. I think it's going to be a pretty intense game in terms of how well Spurs defense, and if Leeds can defend well. If Leeds can defend well, they really can pull off something in this game, and it's not just me saying it for the sake of controversy. If Leeds defend well in this game, they can pull off something. So I do think Leeds can take the win over that one. I'm taking Leeds with a 3-2 win. Moving on to Crystal Palace versus Sheffield United. Crystal Palace most recently had their 1-1 draw with Leicester. Sheffield, again, lost to Burnley. They still have not won a game this season, and I don't think it continues with Crystal Palace, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to go with, the odds are minus 103 for Crystal Palace win, plus 235 for the draw, plus 280 for the Sheffield win. I'm surprised the odds aren't heavier in Crystal Palace's favor, but the fact that they're under at all is pretty good for them. I agree. There's really not much to be said here. I think I'm going to go with a 2-0 win for Crystal Palace over Sheffield. When Sheffield's going to beat a team, honestly, I don't know. I think the only teams that they realistically will stand a chance against are the ones that are around them. They've had multiple opportunities to take down teams that are around them, but they haven't been able to take those opportunities, and they're still winless, 2 points at the bottom of the table. So I don't think they'll get their win anytime soon, and I definitely don't think it starts here. So I'm going with the Crystal Palace win, and this one probably one of the easier calls of this week. Moving on to Brighton versus Wolves, a bit of a tougher one. Brighton most recently had their 1-0 loss versus Arsenal, and as we mentioned earlier, Wolves had their 1-0 loss versus Man United. It's the first game of the week where two teams who just coming off losses are going against each other here. Brighton are plus 165 for the win, plus 210 for the draw, plus 175 for the Wolves win. So Brighton are slight favorites in this one, and I think it comes down to form. However, I mean, Brighton haven't won a game for like a month. Let's just get that out there. They've drawn a lot recently. They've lost a couple recently. The last time they won was against Aston Villa. I think that was at the beginning of November or something like that. And they've drawn a lot since then, to be fair. They haven't really been losing a whole lot, but they just haven't been able to get any wins either. And then you have Wolves, who've had a pretty tough schedule recently. I mean, they started with a win over Arsenal, and then they had to lose to Liverpool, then they had a break, and then they played Chelsea, won that game, break. They played Spurs and United back-to-back, and so they've had a pretty tough schedule recently, which is why their record might not be the greatest in their last 5 games or so. But in this one, it's a tough one because Brighton are a team who do play well in their games. They do. They play well in their games. They just don't get results. And then you have Wolves who play well, who are a bit up and down. A bit up and down in terms of their results. Not that they necessarily play poorly, it's just they don't get the results that they need. I saw a lot of stuff about them playing, parking the bus against United. I mean, you're gonna do what you got to do to win, and as ugly as it might be, Spurs probably one of the best examples of that. As ugly as it might be, you come away with 3 points, so it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. But with this one, these two are pretty, even in terms of the odds, they're really even. Who's going to win? I feel like Wolves, if I had to lean towards one side, I think Wolves are more likely to win. But I think I'm going to go with my first draw of the week. I think I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw between these two. 1-1 draw between these two. And I think it's going to be a pretty tight game. And like I said, if either team's going to win, I'm going to lean more towards Wolves because of Brighton's track record. However, I wouldn't be surprised if Brighton can pull off something in this game. But I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw between these two to make it a pretty even first draw of the week here for me. And we'll see how that one turns out. Now moving on to West Brom versus Arsenal. Arsenal finally getting back on track. They've had a couple wins under their belt now, back to back. And most recently, they had their 1-0 win versus Brighton. West Brom had their 5-0 loss versus Leeds. West Brom were getting, some results, string some results together. That's a big setback, though, with that 5-0 loss versus Leeds. Some of the odds is plus 450 for the West Brom win, plus 300 for the draw, minus 176 for the Arsenal win. For Arsenal, I mean, if they really want to get back on track like they have been, they got to be beating teams like West Brom. Although West Brom have proven to be, tough to beat more recently, since they got their new manager, good old Sam. tough because I mean West Brom pulled off draws against City and Liverpool. So obviously this isn't going to be an easy game for Arsenal. I wouldn't be surprised if West Brom can pull it off again. I was surprised with those 2 draws, but not anymore if they do manage to pull it off. I do think that that Arsenal should be beating West Brom, so I'm going to go with a 2-1 win for Arsenal. I think they continue to get themselves back on track after, beating Chelsea, beating Brighton. They're going to get themselves back on track, and they continue on with a win over West Brom. Unfortunately, almost relegation rivals for Arsenal, but I think that Arsenal should be winning this game, and they will win this game with a 2-1 scoreline there. Moving on to Burnley versus Fulham. Burnley with a 1-0 win versus Sheffield most recently. Fulham had their game postponed versus Spurs, but before that they had their 0-0 draw with Southampton. Fulham is another team who were towards the bottom, who have been getting some decent results going. In terms of the odds, it's plus 125 for the Burnley win, plus 220 for the draw, plus 230 for the Fulham win. So Burnley favorites in this one, understandably so. I would agree. I'm gonna right off the bat, I'm gonna go with the Burnley win. I think a 1-0. I think 1-0. I think I'm going to go with a 1-0 win for Burnley over Fulham. That's going to be a pretty close-ish game. Depends on Fulham. It always depends on Fulham because, they had a rough start to the season. They probably were the worst team in the league in terms of how they played, and then, Sheffield came along. But in this one, I think I'm going to comfortably go with a Burnley win. I'm not overly confident, actually. I think Fulham might be able to pull off something against Burnley, and it wouldn't be, out of this world if they can pull off something. But I'm going to go with a Burnley win in that one. No real reasoning behind it. I just think Burnley will win that one. Moving on to Newcastle versus Leicester. Newcastle most recently had their big 0-0 draw with Liverpool. Leicester had their 1-1 draw with Crystal Palace to set them back a bit. In terms of the odds, it's plus 425 for the Newcastle win, plus 290 for the draw, minus 164 for the Leicester win. And I'm inclined to agree. I think Newcastle, although they did pull off a good result against Liverpool, I don't think that they can... Well, it really depends on Leicester, man. Leicester just have been kind of all over the place recently. The results have been kind of everywhere. So it really depends on Leicester. Whether Leicester can pull it off and play well, play like Leicester City, play like they have. Or if we get a subdued version of them who just kind of draws against poor teams and loses against poor teams. So it really depends on Leicester in this one, but I'm confident that Leicester will come out to play. I'm going to go with a 2-0 win for Leicester over Newcastle in this one. I'm inclined to agree with the odds. I think Leicester are the stronger of two sides. I would have said Leicester were the stronger of the two sides versus Crystal Palace, but obviously they drew in that one. I would have said Liverpool were the stronger of the two sides, yet Newcastle pulled off a draw in that one. So it's going to be an interesting game here. Wouldn't be surprised if Newcastle can pull off something, but I think Leicester are the stronger of the two sides and will walk away with all 3 points in that one. Now moving on to the headline match of the week. The reason why I have Stamford Bridge in the layout around here, because the game is being played at Stamford Bridge. Chelsea's at home. Most recently had their 1-1 draw with Aston Villa. City had their game postponed versus Everton, but before that they had their 2-0 win over Newcastle. In terms of the odds, it's plus 195 for the Chelsea win, plus 255 for the draw, plus 125 for the City win. So the odds are in City's favor, not by a whole lot, not as much as I honestly would have expected. Obviously, Chelsea are not in great form right now. They've won 1 of their last 5, losing 3 of them and drawing the other one. To be fair, last game, not even last week, it was like a couple days ago. Their last game against Aston Villa, they played well. They played pretty well. It was a decent game for them. The results obviously not going their way, but last game against Aston Villa, they did play well. Then you have City, and it remains to be seen whether having your game postponed helps you or not, whether that extra rest can help you or not. So we'll see with City whether it helps them, whether it hinders them having that extra day off. I think it'll help them, to be honest, and this isn't an excuse for Chelsea. This is just me getting it out there. It'll probably help City, getting the rest, players, important players. Don't know if Gabriel Jesus or Kyle Walker will be back in time. I doubt it. I think it's 2 weeks minimum, and it just happened last week that they got COVID. So I don't think they'll be back. Whether Sergio Aguero is back, in action, it remains to be seen as well. We've seen what City can do at the Bridge. Obviously, they've come up with some big wins in recent times. So City can do it. However, Chelsea have also pulled off some big results against City in recent times. So it's a tough one to call. I'm going to go with a City win. I think Chelsea will still struggle. I think Chelsea are still struggling to really find their rhythm again after coming off of that big, undefeated streak. unbeaten streak. I think City will come over this one. I think it's going to be a tight one, though. I think it's 2-1. I'm going to go with a 2-1 win for City. I think it's going to be a pretty tight game. I think this is a game where Chelsea can finally get back into form, get back into some kind of rhythm. But unfortunately, they don't come away with 3 points or any points for that matter in this game. I kind of believe that Chelsea can pull off a result in this one. Chelsea have a lot of talent and can pull off a win in this one. But I'm going to go with a City win in this one. I'm going to agree with the odds, have City at the slight favorite. So I'm going to give City the slight win, 2-1 over Chelsea in that one. Now the final game of the week, Southampton versus Liverpool. Southampton most recently had their 0-0 draw with West Ham. Liverpool had their 0-0 draw with Newcastle. In terms of the odds, it's plus 375 for a Southampton win, plus 320 for the draw, minus 159 for the Liverpool wins. Obviously, Liverpool are the favorites in this one. Liverpool have had interesting form. They had a chance to jump ahead, I think it was 6 points in first, but unfortunately they drew with Newcastle. I think it might have been 5 points actually, but they drew with Newcastle and are now only 3 points ahead of Man United, who do have like 2 games in hand, or 1 game in hand. Now for this one, I'm going to agree. I think Liverpool will win this one. Southampton will give them problems though. I'm not going to guarantee it because it's Liverpool, but I do think Southampton give Liverpool problems. They are playing at home, and I'm not sure if Southampton do have fans or not. That is also a big thing that goes throughout this whole list. I'm not sure if Southampton have fans or not, but if they do, I think the home field advantage will help them a bit. Southampton have done well this season. They most recently, obviously, like I mentioned, drew with West Ham, but I think they can give Liverpool a run for their money, but I think Liverpool come away with a win in this one on all 3 points. I'm going to go with a 2-0 win for Liverpool in this one, away from home. Like I said, if Southampton have fans, I think it'll make it a lot more interesting. I think Southampton will have a lot more motivation going in this game against Liverpool, but I think Liverpool will just prove to be too much for Southampton in that one. Now, those are all my predictions. This is, again, I didn't even mention at the beginning, this is me assuming every single game is going to get played. There's been no news of any game getting postponed, or at least I've missed the news of any game getting postponed. So hopefully no games get postponed and we get to watch every single one of these, because I think all these games are going to be pretty interesting in terms of how tight they're going to be. But like I said earlier, go down in the comments, let me know your predictions for this game. Do you agree? Do you disagree? If you disagree, let me know your thoughts on the games. And while you're down there, like I said, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe. Go check out the socials in the description while you're down there. My Twitter is @BlueHermit1. My Instagram is @BlueHermit_. Please share the socials with your friends, family, everybody know. Let the people know Blue Hermit's where it's at. And I'll see you guys later. Bye.